Hitler seems like the bar that people set when it comes to dictators.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he is.
But you have people like Pol Pot who killed many more people than Hitler did. But what makes Hitler stand out amongst the history of dictators who have communist or fascist who have kind of destroyed their countries or destroyed people in their countries or tried to take over the world? Like, what makes him stand out so much?
I think to me there's two things. Number one is, actually maybe there's three things. Number one is the pure charisma of the man. You know, you watch videos of him, you watch speeches, you see pictures, and sort of, you have to understand where Germany was at the time. You have to, you know, it's the same as today in America. Why did America re-elect Trump as opposed to elect Kamala Harris? You have to understand the environment that the country is in at the time. So Germany at the time was in a pretty crap place. And
they were still paying all this money because of World War One,
and they'd lost land, and people were looking for, you know, someone to blame. And Hitler came along, and he was a very charismatic speaker, and he had this way of capturing people and making them listen, or some way making them listen. I think the second thing is that it happened in Europe. It happened in a European country that was considered sophisticated and cultured, and unfortunately, that's just the way the world works. You know, Pol Pot was in Cambodia, the Viet Cong. You know, if the Americans had never gone to Vietnam, you know, the Vietnam War will obviously have been a completely different story, but people may have paid far less attention to it. The fact that Germany and World War II began in Europe, I think, brought a lot more focus on, because people expect better of Europeans. We're, you know, held to be sophisticated or enlightened or cultured or however you want to say it. So I think that is a part of it. And I think the third thing, maybe not Hitler himself, but the reason that the Holocaust is held up to such a degree was the industrialization of it. Like you said, plenty of dictators have killed millions of their own people. Mao did it in China, Stalin in Russia, Pol Pot did it in Cambodia. These people have killed millions. Many of them, Mao and Stalin definitely killed more than Hitler in terms of killing their own population. But it was the industrialization, the fact that the Nazis didn't just, you know, it wasn't because they caused a famine, or it wasn't because, you know, they did X or Y. They physically had this machine of putting people on trains, getting them off trains. They had this industrialized chemical that they, you know, this gas that they pumped into a
mustard gas, yeah,
Zyklon B, that they would, you know, it was the industrialization of the killing machine. That's what I think sets the Holocaust, or sets World War II apart, in terms of why that's the benchmark. And it's funny you mention that, because there's a sort of there's an internet law, you know, Reddit and all these places where people have discussions and these threads. There's sort of an internet law that whenever somebody brings up Hitler or the Nazis, oh, well, Hitler thought like that, therefore it must be wrong. The argument is finished, because there's nowhere to go from that. It's sort of this unwritten law of the internet that there's just no way you can go from there, because that's the
benchmark.
That's the benchmark.
Well, it's one of these reasons why I really hate when people refer to anybody as like Hitler. Like, you see a lot of people were calling Trump Hitler.
And Netanyahu as well. It's a ridiculous comparison.
Well, it also, I think, like it dilutes the
Completely.
evil that these people were. Like, if you think that, if you're hearing your entire life that Hitler is the worst person in the world, and then he's being compared to somebody like Trump or Bibi or whoever, you're doing the world a disservice.
Certainly the younger people genuinely don't understand what on earth they're saying when they say things like that. When they compare Trump to Hitler, it's ignorance, basically. It's pure ignorance. They're trying to make a point, but they're not making that point. They're just coming across, unfortunately, as very ignorant of history, and also a little bit ignorant of the world that they live in right now. You know, that's how I
How
look
so?
at it. Because you need to understand that, you know, we're not living in a like World War II style period. We're not living, you know, there were not fascist regimes ruling European countries, or, you know, people try and paint sort of the Russia-Ukraine war in this manner. But America, for example, everybody is so polarized. The middle ground is disappearing. That sort of normal middle ground, caring about, you know, basic domestic issues. In America, everybody seems to have lost their minds, and you either love Trump with an absolute passion and he's the Messiah, or you despise him and can't believe, you know, it's just the worst thing in the world, and people break into tears. And I think sometimes you need to be able to say, well, actually, the world does go on. The sun will still rise tomorrow. In 4 years, there'll be another president, whether one likes that or dislikes that. You know, this is the way the world is. And it's the same here in Israel, by the way. You know, we've had a prime minister who's been here for a very long time. And one day he won't be in charge anymore. Whether people think that's a good thing or people think that's a bad thing, people just need to remember that the sun does rise every day. Tomorrow's a new day, and the world will keep going on.